Hey folks, it's Zach Osterman here, Yahoo Insider, Indianapolis Star, coming to you from a now largely empty Assembly Hall. A busy Friday night. I apologize, nobody really around to shoot this video for me in stand-up fashion, so we'll have to do it like this. A lot of people are working, a lot of people have gone home, it's almost 1 o'clock. The game first, Indiana loses 80-78 to Ohio State. Wild game, double overtime game, good game. I thought in a lot of respects, I thought both sides played a fairly clean game, only 25 total turnovers in 50 minutes of basketball. Both sides, Indiana shot 44.6%, Ohio State shot 47.8%, so it wasn't an offensive clinic, but I thought that was because both sides defended well in spurts. Keita Bates-Diop, who's a Big Ten Player of the Year candidate, did what you'd expect him to do. He had 24 points, all five Ohio State starters scored in double figures. Juwan Morgan had 18, Robert Johnson and what might be his Assembly Hall swan song had 17. Justin Smith had 16 off the bench. His late season emergence continues. And it was very back and forth. Indiana started both halves of regulation really struggling, and yet kind of found a way to see out those stretches and not maybe let those stretches really bog it down. Or kind of destroy the game, destroy the performance, I guess you'd say. Had chances to win it. Robert Johnson had a layup blocked right at the end of regulation, at the end of the second half, I guess would maybe be a more precise way to say that. But Johnson also hit 2 big free throws to force the second overtime. And Juwan Morgan actually hit a layup with about 7.5 seconds left. That gave Indiana a 1-point lead in the second overtime. But C.J. Jackson, one of Ohio State's guards, hit a 28-footer. Archie Miller said he hadn't really seen film of exactly what happened. He couldn't say post-game, precisely what led to it. But Jackson hit a 28-footer with less than 2 seconds left, and it was essentially the game-winning shot. So it was senior day, or senior night, and obviously I think a disappointing way for guys like Robert Johnson and Colin Hartman and Josh Newkirk and Freddie McSwain to go out, but Archie Miller was at pains to talk post-game during the sort of senior presentation about just how much this senior class has meant to him and his staff in terms of their buy-in to Miller's way of doing things and Miller's approach, and that he feels like if there's going to be success while he's at Indiana in the future, that he hopes kind of that people look back on these seniors as a really big part of sort of building the foundations for that success. So Hoosiers are 16-14 on the season. They're 9-9 in conference play to end the regular season. They will play Thursday night. They'll be in the night session at Madison Square Garden. Probably good for attendance. Indiana always seems to draw well at the Garden, and if you're the Big Ten, you don't really want that a program like that playing in the morning, afternoon. As best I understand it, Indiana can still be the 6 or the 7 seed. It just depends on how the rest of the results for the Big Ten play out this weekend. So we will obviously be there for that. That's the game. There's also, and it's impossible to ignore this, and it shouldn't be ignored, Yahoo Sports put out a report tonight, basically toward the end of the game, might have even broken either very late in the second half or in overtime, that mentioned, that went deeper into detail about the FBI investigation of ASM Sports Agency, which has been at the sort of the center of the college basketball scandal that's been unfolding in the last few months. And in emails between Christian Dawkins, who's an associate at ASM, and some of his and other unnamed ASM employees, former IU assistant coach Chuck Martin was named. The emails don't provide a ton of context. Essentially, they sort of seem to suggest that Dawkins was trying to offer different schools, Indiana and Michigan State in particular, Brian Bowen's commitment in exchange for favor with current players from those programs or recent former players from those programs that would need NBA representation. What's important to note, and I wrote an insider about this, this is Indiana's first tangible connection to this. I think this is the first time we've actually seen Indiana raised in association with this. What's important to note is that there's not anything in this so far that says that implicates Indiana. There's nothing to suggest that Martin was responsive to whatever it was that ASM or Christian Dawkins were offering. There's nothing to suggest that Indiana got involved, and that may seem like covering, and I understand why it does, because I'm the IU beat writer, and I cover this specifically. But that said, it's, I think, very, very important to deal in facts right now, and the facts as we know them are that Indiana was discussed between ASM employees, as was Michigan State, but Brian Bowen didn't go to Indiana. In fact, at no point can I recall Bowen being mentioned as a serious target for Indiana. I believe he had an Indiana offer, and I believe Indiana recruited him at various points, but I don't think Indiana was involved at the end of his recruitment. Neither Thomas Bryant nor OG Anunoby were wound up signing with ASM employed agents. That they both went with other agencies. They were mentioned as in the email between Dawkins and another ASM employee. They were essentially mentioned as forgive me, it's late and I'm tired, but as players that they could try to trade Bowen's commitment for favor in representing them. Neither of them signed with an ASM employed agent, and Bowen obviously wound up going to Louisville. So it's obviously, if you're a fan, I think understandably unsettling to see your program connected to this in any shape or form. I think it's also really important to remember that it's hard to imagine any major program in college basketball isn't going to get touched by this, but connected to it or touched by it and directly implicated in it are two very different things at this point. And there's nothing in that what came out Friday night that says that Indiana or Chuck Martin was anything other than discussed between ASM employees. We don't know what's coming next. This is a slow trickle. The FBI is going to take its time. The NCAA is going to take its time. There's a long legal process that needs to play out here, obviously. But I think at this point, what's important is to deal in facts. And the facts as we know them are that Indiana was discussed, Chuck Martin was discussed between ASM employees. That does not mean that Indiana was directly involved, if that makes sense. That's what we know right now, and I think that's what people need to keep in mind. So this is like far and away the longest Insider video we've done, but there was a lot of ground to cover, so let's just wrap it up here one more time. Indiana falls in its regular season finale on senior night, 80-78 to Ohio State. Hoosiers are 16-14, 9-9 in Big Ten play. They will be in New York City for the Big Ten tournament next week. We will be there for that. Between now and then, for the Indianapolis Star, I'm Zach Osterman. We'll see you soon.